Hi, welcome to Wrap Up Week 7. I'm a Master of Forestry student at Northern Arizona University. This is my second semester. I'm doing a weekly wrap up of 3 classes: forest insects, ecological economics, and independent study focused on food security. So this week in my insects class, we did a little bit more on wood borers. Those are the ash borer. It is from China. In that country, it only feeds on dead trees. Here, it is on live trees, and it is very aggressive. One beetle can kill 1 sapling. There are no known climate limitations to it. The most important thing that we can do is don't move firewood. If you see signs that say "don't bug me," this is one of the reasons that we move it from place to place, and then that's the best way that it can become an invasive species in the next location. We looked at clear-winged moths. That's from the Lepidoptera family. The larvae, the caterpillar stage, it chews the wood. It has to be kind of on the outside of the wood at the end of the stage, because it's then going to become the clear-winged moth, and the moth would not be able to escape from the wood. So if you see a tree with little half parts of the caterpillar sticking out, that's probably the clear-winged moth. When the moth becomes an adult, it actually looks like a wasp, but it will be going from flower to flower, so you can tell that it is a wasp mimicry instead of an actual wasp. It's pretty cool. The moths come out in the day, so that's pretty unusual. We looked then at the horntail wasp, and they are actual wasps. The female lays the egg in the bark and injects microbe into it, and that is actually what is killing the tree. The Ambrosia beetle does this similar thing. It carries the fungus with it, and the fungus uses the xylem, the more woody part of the tree, to have as its food, and then the Ambrosia beetle is eating the wood, but it brings the fungus with it, and the fungus or the microbes are what is killing the tree. Let's see, one of the cool things about the Ambrosia beetle, because it is eating the xylem, if you want to think about it, the phloem is where the food is, so there's the bark, and then the phloem and the xylem. The phloem is where the food goes up and down, and the xylem, the X, is next to the W, and that brings the water up from the nutrient, from the soil. The water and nutrients come up. So the insects that go all the way into the xylem and eat that, on the other side, that's where the actual hard wood part is, so that will be a very light colored frass. The Asian Ambrosia beetle, it has very compact frass. Do y'all remember that word from like the first or second class? It's basically insect poop. So the Asia Ambrosia beetle has very compact frass, and it has it pushes it out as it's eating. So if you see a tree with a bunch of little tiny white sticks coming out of it, those are basically poop sticks, and that is from the Asian Ambrosia beetle. So I keep talking about that they tunnel either into the phloem or the xylem, and this one I hope you might be able to see. That's a tunnel right there that the insect is making, and there's several different lines on here, not the actual cracks, but you can see hopefully where the tunnels are that the insect is making. The Asian Ambrosia beetle can be found in shipping material, and that's one way it gets from country to country. So to address that, they actually use acoustics to find out if the beetles are inside of there. I turned the wrong way. Oh, so one of the things that was cool that we studied was seed and cone insects, and those are very, very big concern, because for the plant it needs to have the reproduction of the cones, and also seeds and nuts are a big thing that people rely on. So my professor said to get a Ziploc baggie and put some cones in there. There kind of is a lot of moisture in there. I'm not sure you guys can see the cones, but the insects are pretty cautious, so I have to wait about 2 weeks to see if anything is going to come out of here. I have hopes that there are insects in there, because this is one of the cones that I found, and this is what size it should be. So this is a conelet. That was a new word for me, first year. But it should not, or it could have just been one that didn't develop. So I'm going to find that out, but they ought not to be on the ground this size. They should still be on the tree, because they need to stay up and develop. So I've got some of those in here. I'll find out in a couple of weeks. I'll let you know if I have any insects crawling around. I hope my apartment is warm enough for them to want to come out. Let's see, there are a couple of different things you can identify with the cones. If you see one that is small and has lots of resin, that's probably from the cone weevil. If you see one that is just small, that is most likely from the pine cone beetle. That one you could cut in half and see a lot of frass, but forewarning, don't cut your finger when you're cutting the pine cone in half. They're pretty hard to cut. There's a couple of different kinds of moths that go after the seeds. There's if you see two holes, that one, the caterpillar stage, it's tunneled in and it's tunneled out. That's the seed worm. If you see one that looks like the cone has just been eaten up like an apple, but it has lots of silk inside, that's from the cone worm. Excuse me. There's another one that is the Calcids. Those are little wasps, and they are teeny, teeny, tiny wasps. They are so tiny, they fit all the way inside the cone. I'm sorry, all the way inside the seed. And they are very hard. Well, you can't see them. So if you're harvesting seeds, you don't know if the baby wasp is inside of there. I mean, the adult wasp, the whole wasp fits inside. So they x-ray the seeds to see if they have wasp inside there. The best way to control the different kind of cone issues and seed issues is to keep your area clean underneath the tree. So for the wood borers, you don't want to move the wood, and for the tree cone seed insects, keep your area clean. For the cone and seed insects, the population fluctuates really greatly because they have this cool skill, which is they can go into diapause, extended diapause. Diapause is when they are in suspended development, so the pupa can stay in the seed or the cone for like 2 or 3 years. All right, that's the word for the insects, diapause. Now for EE, we moved on to a new module. We are studying systems thinking and resilience. An adaptive cycle is the one that we looked at this time. Some of the cool parts of it were you need to, if you're looking at the whole system, you need to figure out what's missing, the feedbacks, or the ones that are existing and ignored or unknown. We looked at, you can have like grass and cattle. We know the cattle will eat down the grass. That's one direct effect, but then the rain could have an effect with the grass. That's a side effect. But what we didn't realize was that if there's not enough grass, when the rain comes, it will not penetrate. So that's a feedback loop, and those are the critical links that you have to find to figure out what's going on within a system. We also looked at a system where you can see it as 4 parts. There's the reseeding stage, and then that goes into there's reorganizing, exploitation, conservation, and then collapse. So they kind of go from they're loopy. They're like the infinity loops, and you need to figure out what part of your system is in that to know where it's going. The conservation leads down into the collapse or the release stage. It is also called creative destruction. You can look at that in terms of different scales. I had it on a small scale. After my 3 midterms, I am went through a creative destruction stage, and I'm now in a reorganization era. Let's see. The 3 words that you want to look for are making sure your system is ecologically, economically, and socially has all 3 of those components in it. Another thing I thought was interesting, you can decide if they're fast or slow moving actions that are going on. And you need to ask resilience of what and for what. That we have, those are our own concepts. They are not necessarily inherent. And the word for ecological economics is inertia, which is the property of matter that is either wants to continue at rest or in motion until an external force. And those are things that affect us individually, but also within your system. All right, independent study. I looked at the definitions of food security and Homo ecologicus. And food security, I learned about the Green Revolution during the 60s and 70s. We were very much into engineering answers, and we had agrotechnology answers. It created a lot of development in the way that we produce food, but it came at a cost, and that was environmental. So we are now trying to re-examine the ways we look at food structures, and it needs to be similar concept as ecological economics. It needs to be ecologically sound, economically viable, and socially sustainable for the present and the future. So they're thinking more about eco-technology now. There is a long list of problems of our agricultural system as it exists. It's a mess, but one of the things that I find positive is, if you remember about the story about the bats and how they are a part of the economic success story for farmers. So we're beginning to understand we need to look at this as a whole system instead of just we need to engineer more food. And another concept of food security is that it needs to be not only nutritious and have enough caloric needs, but it needs to be culturally appropriate food. I thought this was interesting. India considers itself food secure. However, 1/5 of its population is suffering from chronic malnourishment. So what is our definition of food security? And another issue is how much access do you have to food? And we often think about that like in terms of urban areas. In rural areas where I work in the summer, it can be an hour and 15-minute drive one way to get to a really good grocery store. But also, if you only have 2 highways and those both got blocked off, then you would have no more food being able to be delivered to your community. All right, so then I looked at Homo ecologicus, and that is trying to shift away from being so anthropocentric, where everything is about us. And one of the things that we're doing is re-examining the human-nature relationship. And do we have a comprehensive vision of a harmonious relationship with nature? Because we need to have that in order to define what that baseline is and how we want to get there and what would it look like in order to try and arrive there. Then I am beginning to compare these two different systems. One is theory, one is reality, so that's going to be fun to try and figure out where they interlap and overlap, or what kind of gaps that I can find in the frameworks of how we deal with these two concepts. So the word for my independent study is, the theme is carrying capacity. And that is how much a system can hold and how it can function. I would like to carry that over to caring capacity, because one of the things that we keep learning is, for the forest system to work, we have to care about the community, we have to care about the economics, and we have to care for the whole ecological system itself. And care as a noun means that you want to give serious attention to something, to make it correct or to avoid damage. And as a verb, it means look after and provide for the needs. So as a synopsis, the insects, we looked at different parts of what the insect eats: the phloem or the xylem, if they eat live trees or dead trees, and if they have a symbiotic fungus that they need, and then also how to help control those insects. With the ecological economics, we looked at resilience and adaptive capacity, the four phases of that. And how important, I don't think I mentioned this, but a redundancy is really important. That could be thought of as biodiversity, but the capacity needs to have, the system needs to have the capacity for redundancy. In our own human systems, for the different entryways for pathogens, we have actually specific organs that are addressed for each of those. So if we only had one, then it would get overtaxed, and that could be where we are headed with the way that we have been dealing with our environment, where we have been so focused on engineering instead of the whole system as a functioning unit. And then in the independent class, we looked at ag systems with a focus on efficiency and how necessary it is to have resilience for the ecosystem as a whole to be resilient. And I would like to conclude that for managing forests, it is not just an objective science, but it is a caring across multiple disciplines. The poetry for this week is, the name of the poem is Renew. In all her beauty, Mother Earth asks for nothing. Let me start over. In all her beauty, Mother Earth asks for nothing more than renewed life. That is by Megan from the University of Miami Climate Change page. So I hope you will go outside and see what it is that you want to care about, how you can care about it, and why it's worth caring about. And I hope you enjoy some outdoor time this week. Ciao!